Well, you know what? Let's. You mentioned school visits, and I'm forever curious about tips for school visits. So, what does a Kate Hannigan school visit look like, and
Oh
what
God,
tips do you have for authors who want to go and give great school visits as well?
hilarious. So, okay, the first thing, like when I started thinking about doing author visits, I had three harsh audience members living in my house and eating at my dining room table. So my kids, would always be like, "Oh, don't be boring." And then one of my kids said, "You have to put a picture of our dog up there because every author that comes in always has a picture of their animal." I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll put in a picture of Bella, the Australian Shepherd." The way I look at school visits is, schools are strapped and you are coming in and taking a day or some hours of their time. So I always want to be a value add. So I'm not in there to like flog selling my book. I'm in there to just talk about a love of reading, a love of writing, explain that I was not strong at either of those as a kid, and that nobody's great at anything when they start. And, for example, I use the scroll of doom to show, look, I was told no, and then here I am standing in front of you with a bunch of books. And I talk about, wasn't Michael Jordan cut from his high school basketball team? Like I try to give examples of nobody walks out there and is amazing. So your writing life that's beginning now in third, fourth, fifth grade is just beginning, and your job is just to learn and learn how to do it well. And how do you do that? You read the books that you're talking about in your classroom, and you mess around with writing, and you write as much as you can, and you eavesdrop. I tell them, eavesdrop. um, Come home with chunky words and your parents will be amazed. you know Listen to words, write down words, look for editing. Like, I every time I go out to eat, I look at the menu and I look for all the typos because I'm a nerd. But and that no matter what you go into in life, there will always be storytellers. Somebody has to tell the story of it. So my husband does brain science, and he didn't like writing, but guess what you have to do when you're in brain science or in any kind of science? You have to tell the story of your science. You have to be able to write about it. So I just talk about, listening to family stories, listen to your teacher's stories, and and read. I mean, I do beat the drum on reading because I live with Fortnite players, who just want to be playing video games, and it's distressing, like what we're up against as authors. So I am the antidote to they're going to go home and game. I'm like, go pick up a book. So I do try to be a value add and talk about writing and literacy. And a lot of times we do exercises on getting started, like and I read some of the best opening lines of middle grade, like Kate DiCamillo. If you're out there, listener, and you're still with us, some of the best opening lines, just talking about how you can kind of hook a reader, grab them by the collar, and just pull them into your book. And I think Kate DiCamillo for Because of Winn-Dixie has one of the best opening lines, where she just goes to the store and she names like three super ordinary things to get a bag of white rice, 2 tomatoes, and I came home with a dog. So it's like boring, bing. um, not Stuart Little, Charlotte's Web, how they're setting the table for breakfast, and Fern says, "Where's Papa going with that axe?" And it's like, how many of you guys had breakfast today? And the hands go up. How many of you guys had an axe at the table? So it's like imagery, how you can really pull people in by just simply laying one dangerous thing right there in the most ordinary circumstances, setting the table for breakfast. So,
well, if you're asking the kids who's got an axe at their breakfast table, somebody might get a call from CPS later.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a weed out question for the counselors in the audience.
That's another value added.
Another value add, exactly. But I try to be cognizant of the fact that teachers are, taxed to death with all the things they have to get done. For you to have the privilege to come into their classroom and talk directly to the kids, that it should be about something more than pushing product. It should be, let's talk about words. Let's talk about opening lines. Let's talk about why we read. Let's talk about how reading connects us. One of my favorite books that I talk about all the time is, oh my God, I just forgot the name of it. Oh, well, scrap it. I can't think of it.
I
Oh
assume you were going to say Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Beans.
exactly. Oh my God, I love this book so much. Why did I just blank on it? Anyway, it's a story about a girl whose dad has MS, and it's pre-internet, so it's set in the historical era of the 1980s. And she watches her dad lose use of his legs, and it sounds really depressing. It's the meaning of Maggie. That's it, the meaning of Maggie. And so she's kind of like, okay, well, what's going on with dad? So she's trying to figure out what MS is, and it sounds really depressing, but she's so funny. It's like so character driven. But we're in Maggie's house and we're seeing what's happening to her dad. And I read it with my son around the time of that ice bucket challenge where everybody's dumping water on their heads. And that was to raise money for, I think, ALS, which is not the same as MS, but both are neurodegenerative. And I just talked to kids about how I didn't have anybody in my life who was going through that, but I actually got to see by being at Maggie's kitchen table, I got to see what was happening and how hard that was and how hard it would be for any of us to watch someone we love so much, their health change. And so how we push through and still hold on to that person we love, and how we get through as a family. And I just thought it was so moving, but that's why we read, right? It takes us into somebody's kitchen where we wouldn't ordinarily be at the table. So.
Yeah, and in a way that no other medium, I think, quite can.
Yeah.
Other mediums are great at different things. Like, I've never read a book that was able to successfully pull off a jump scare. That's strictly movie and video game territory.
Right.
But at the same time, what I always like to tell people is, because it's a partnership between you and the reader, it's an act of hypnosis on your end when you're writing it. But then later when I'm reading it, it's a bit of hypnosis that I'm putting in my input, which is why no other medium will ever terrify as uniquely as a book, because it's all of you bringing in all of your neuroses into the horror story. The monster is part, that mean thing your dad said when you were a kid that you've never gotten over. And they can't pull that off in a movie version. It's got to be there in the book. What's a good length for a school visit where you're not losing the kids' interest?
Oh, that is such a good question, because I'm going at the end of the month down to St. Louis, and it's a whole new talk. Like I had to scrap the old talk and do a new talk because we're talking superheroes now. And
you sound like a comedian who just got rid of their hour and has to get a new one.
Yeah, so I am a little stressed about it. Like, I like school visits, but man, kids are a tough audience, because if they are not interested, it. It's like palpable. And then you just feel like a comedian on stage just dying. So I live in fear of school visits, but I like them, because it is really fun to get out of my, one person little office and interact with readers and see how things are playing. But I think 45 is a good length, and do those last 10 minutes or so with questions. And then I find that the way you say, who has a question, you might get crickets. But when you say, now, ask me your questions, or my thing is, because the detective's assistant has people dressed up in costumes, I would bring false mustaches, and I would say, if you have a question, you get a false mustache. And then the room, everybody shoots their hand in the room. So I'm not above bribery for enthusiasm, but so I try to bring stuff, but the mustaches have gone over well. I don't know, maybe I'll bring masks. I should really think about this, what I'm going to bring for the question and answer. But
I assume you want to steer clear of candy because of allergens and.
Yeah, you never know who's got a horrible allergy to something, and something novelty that they might not have. Like, nobody has false mustaches, so they smack them on and walk out of the visit, with a whee. So that's always fun. But yeah, so I do about 45 minutes of a talk, leave the last 10 of that 45. So it's a 35-minute talk. And I do Google Slides so that I don't have to carry all sorts of laptop and all that. If you do the setup where they have their school computer that's already within the firewall of the school, you just go in there, log into your Google account, and call up your Google slideshow, and boom, it's on the screen. So there's not a lot of, because actually the physical stress to me of a technology malfunction can almost be paralyzing. So I used to bring my laptop with the special little cord that would connect to the projector, and then hope that the projector worked and all this. But if I just use their equipment that's rigged up and ready to go, log in to my Google account, my Google Slides are there, boom, call it up. We're off and running. So that eliminates that level of where's my thumb drive? Where's my laptop? And then I try to talk about things I think they're learning, which is maybe the 6 traits of, creative writing, or like I said before, starting strong, like an opening line that's just going to reach out of the pages and grab you in. Or sometimes I play a game show where I boil down a book to one sentence and see who knows it. And, hands shoot up. So there's a little social cachet for the kids who know all the answers. So, yeah.
I assume that at some point you want to mention the book. You don't want them to go home and say, this nice lady came with fake mustaches came in. She was the mustache lady. I assume at some point you want them to know that you're Kate Hannigan, author of books that are available that they can purchase. When
I talk about writing things that come up, I talk about the things I wrestle with, like finding the right word, and I might read a passage, a little bit from the book or something. And I'll definitely have pictures of the book up there that this is what I go through when I was writing this is what was in my mind, so that they do, make a connection. And also that scroll of doom led somewhere, and I try to point where it led. But, what's really fun is on page 6 of The Detective's Assistant, I always read, I killed off, I always tell them the dark underbelly of children's lit, which is authors all across the country right now are trying to figure out how to get rid of the parents, so like, and they always know the Home Alone reference, like Home Alone, where did those parents go? They went on a trip. Where are Harry Potter's parents? Just getting the parents out of the way so that the kids go through it. And then a lot of them are like, oh yeah. So I'm like, so children's authors aren't mean. They're just trying to get the parents out of the way. They're trying to find the most expedient way to do that. And so for me on page 6, I always read page 6 because in one page I kill off everyone in this poor child's family. And it's kind of like my spoof of children's books. But so I just try to do a little, talking generally about writing, the writing life, the reading life, the role of reading, and reinforce a teacher's message on all of those things, and reflect it back onto what I go through, so that they recognize that the torture they're being put through to be a writer at their age is something that they'll continue the rest of their life through that pain. But that it's, that everybody who's writing is trying to do those things, trying to get those things on the page, a better word. Often I have a picture, well, I don't know if it's in the new one or not. I don't think I moved it over, but of people moving through a park, a picture of people being really goofy in a park. And I say, let's get them across the park. And we can just say, they blank across the park. And I say, we can say walked, but what's a more exciting word? And then the kids, raise their hands. And so we just talk about language and using engaging, interesting language as opposed to the expected.
Gotcha. You don't keep the focus on the value added, on talking about general subjects, but you do work the book in there at some point, at least once.
Definitely. Because as someone once said to me, we're always selling.
Yeah. I think that's true even for people who don't write books. Everybody's a salesperson, but I'm a little cynical that way in my view.